We all know the guy on the stage. But beneath the black turtleneck and the billion-dollar product launches, there was a cold, binary logic driving every single heartbeat. It wasn't just about the technology. Think about this. To really understand Apple, you have to look at a kid who spent his whole life feeling chosen and rejected at the exact same time. It's a strange contradiction. Wait, it gets better. By the end of this story, we're going to talk about a chance encounter at a small Mediterranean restaurant that basically haunted Steve until his final breath. You won't see it coming. It starts in 1955. Long before the garage, Steve was a newborn given up for adoption by two people who just weren't ready to be parents. That's where the story actually begins. There's this idea called adoption displacement. Basically, it's a mental fracture that leaves a person with an insatiable need to control everything around them, so they never feel that pain again. It's a survival tactic. Control was his religion. If he could own the chips, the software, and even the way the box felt in your hands, he could make sure nothing was left to chance. He wouldn't be abandoned twice. Then there was the reality distortion field. His team at Apple used that phrase to describe how Steve could bend the truth and push people past their breaking points through pure willpower. He just wouldn't take no for an answer. It wasn't just a sales pitch. See, Steve didn't think he was lying. He just believed in a different reality so hard that everyone else eventually started living in it too. It was a psychological weapon. He looked for peace in Zen Buddhism. In the early 70s, he studied under a monk named Kabun Chino Otagawa to find some kind of internal stillness in the chaos. But it didn't quite work the way you'd think. His Zen was different. For Steve, it wasn't about being calm. It was about the brutal removal of anything that didn't absolutely need to be there. He weaponized simplicity. Look at the Ma concept. It's this Japanese idea about the beauty of empty space, and Steve applied it to circuit boards that no customer would ever actually see. He was obsessed with the invisible. He'd tell engineers that real artists ship. Yet, he actually delayed the original Mac for months because the internal wiring didn't look pretty enough for his standards. It was a total contradiction. This was pure narcissism. What we see is a man using aesthetic perfection as a way to prove he was better than everyone else. He turned design into a moral judgment. His diet was just as extreme. He spent years as a fruitarian, convinced that eating only apples made his body so chemically pure that he didn't need to use deodorant. It sounds crazy, right? It actually caused problems. His coworkers at Atari were so bothered by his smell that they forced him to work the night shift, just so they didn't have to be near him. It was a mess. This purity idea bled into his hiring. In his mind, you were either a genius or a total bozo, with absolutely no middle ground for anyone in between. He saw the world in binary. He even tried primal scream therapy. It's this intense method where you scream to purge the pain of your childhood, hoping to finally get rid of the ghosts. But the ghosts stayed. The purge didn't work. When he was kicked out of Apple in 1985, that old feeling of being thrown away came back with a vengeance. It nearly broke him. During his knee XD years, he paid $100,000 for a logo. He told the designer he didn't want options. He wanted the only answer that mattered, because he couldn't handle any uncertainty. He needed the truth. He was famous for the long pause. He would just stare at people for minutes without blinking, using uncomfortable silence to see who would crack under the pressure first. It was predatory. Even his house was empty. For years, he lived in a mansion with almost no furniture because he couldn't find a single chair that reached his level of unreachable perfection. He just sat on the floor. But perfection has a cost. He spent years refusing to admit he was the father of his daughter, Lisa, even while he was building a computer named after her. It's hard to wrap your head around. This is cognitive dissonance. He had this unique ability to hold two opposite truths at once, allowing him to be a visionary and a tyrant in the same breath. He was complicated. In 1997, he came back. He didn't just save Apple. He pulled off a psychological takeover by firing the board and getting rid of everyone he deemed unfit. He was home. Then came the cancer diagnosis. He thought the reality distortion field could work on his own body, trying to wish the tumor away with fruit juice and spiritual healing. It was a fatal mistake. He thought his mind was stronger than biology. By the time he finally agreed to have surgery, he'd already lost 9 months that he couldn't get back. The distortion finally failed him. Now we get to the part he never told anyone. It's about a small restaurant in Sacramento that holds the key to the whole story. This is where it gets real. Back in the 80s, Steve used to eat at a place owned by a man named John Jandali. He liked the food, he liked the atmosphere, and he shook hands with the owner several times. It was just business. But here's the kicker. Neither of them realized in those moments that they were actually father and son standing face to face. They were total strangers. Eventually, Steve's sister found their father and told Steve the truth. He realized he had been a regular customer to the man who gave him away decades earlier. Imagine that realization. He never went back. He chose to leave that bridge unbuilt, proving that for a man who controlled everything, some broken pieces are just too heavy to pick up. He kept the secret. Wait, think about that. He never reached out to the man again, preferring to keep the circle broken rather than face the person who left him. It's a chilling ending. Steve's story wasn't really about the products. What we see is a man trying to build a perfect world because the real one had rejected him from the very start. It was a shield. He died with a look of wonder on his face. Maybe in those last seconds, he was finally seeing a version of reality that he didn't feel the need to change. He was finally finished. Stay hungry. Stay foolish. But never forget the hidden price of building a world that never lets anyone in. Thanks for listening,